Yep, not hearing anything, which means that our people aren't hearing anything.
I'm hearing you though.
Right.
Maybe you need to correct for it, but we're broadcasting. And well, I should have my cam. I can hear you.
Cue me.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but
excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Can you cue me?
You're
cued. Or is the music done?
The music is done.
Today is Wednesday, February 21st. We are clearly firing on all cylinders. 2018, and this is a video podcast for the Mac Observer. I'm Bryan Chaffin, editor-in-chief for TMO, and that guy is
going to call you a liar because this is not a video podcast, and it never will be. And also, I'd like to take credit for being right about how shitty to the shit power those AirPods are, because they're so fucking reliable. So there you go. My review is correct.
Me not hearing you just now was an issue with Google Hangouts, not this. I heard you the whole time. I didn't hear music.
Oh, I see. That's interesting.
That's weird. I mean, don't get me wrong. I did just have a separate problem with my AirPods. And yes, that problem was ridiculous, but that's not why I didn't hear the music.
I see. That's really fascinating. Huh. Well, I definitely.
Huh. Is it actually fascinating, John?
Well, yeah, if you're a geeky guy, it kind of is. Like, it seems to be pumping out. Well, hopefully you, the very patient viewers, or viewer, or our imaginary viewer.
No, we have people with us. They're here right now.
That did hear that. So anyway, we've gotten off on a tangent quite early, and on this episode, we have 3 topics, and we're lying.
Yeah, but we're blatantly lying.
We're really flagrantly.
Most of the time, we're just lying because we end up introducing more. This time, we're lying because we actually have more.
Right. So, topic number 1 is HomePod impressions. Topic number 2, Cook and the FastCompany interview, and you did, I think, an article on it. 3, really teeny weeny, kind of like, it's more like 2.2, is crypto tax haven Wyoming. And then the other 0.8 of that topic is music influencers are in the ear of the beholder, and a first for us that may become a regular thing, app picks that we like for you, your
regular
viewer.
Or semi-regular.
We shall see. I have a lot of picks, so this could go on for a while. And anyway, it's not just app picks; it's cool picks for your pleasures. So let's get into it. Why don't you start with your HomePod impressions, and then I'll give you mine.
All right. So HomePod impressions from me so far. I've had it for what, a week and a half now? Sound right?
Yeah, about right.
Okay. It solves a lot of my particular HomeKit issues, but I have a very peculiar setup where I've got one room where I'm interested in HomeKit stuff. So I didn't need to outfit my house. I just needed to outfit one particular room. And it solves that problem nicely, because now I can talk to the air and have the HomeKit accessories do stuff that I want them to do. If I was trying to outfit my house, I'd still be cranky as all get out, because I need that cheap dot-like competitor to have a true smart home. From a sound perspective, I also have another peculiar setup. The way my TV works, I was actually listening to TV through my TV speakers, and that's just a terrible idea. So HomePod is a massively dramatic improvement for me. Going through Apple TV now, which is a recent addition for me, and that has been absolutely fantastic. I like the way TV sounds. I am shocked at how good HomePod sounds at low volumes. I've said this on TDO, the Mac Observer's Daily Observations podcast. where most of the time speakers have a sweet spot where, you know, either they have to be loud, they have to be medium, they have to be quiet, and they sound the best at that level. I found HomePod to be pretty consistent from soft to loud, and that's amazing, especially being able to get any kind of bass response when the device is actually a low volume. Now, you may have had a different experience, John, in that I know that you've tested some. As snobby as I am about music, and as snobby as I've always been about my desktop speakers, I know that you've played with speakers that are a lot more expensive than mine. And in general, I think that HomePod is a little bit too bassy. I feel, however, this is for music. I feel, however, that I haven't been listening to music through good speakers because I lost the amplifier on my nice set of speakers. So I'm not sure how much my ear is still being tainted by listening to music through poor quality speakers, because that's a thing.
Yeah, that totally is a thing.
So I'm impressed with HomePod. I like HomePod. I'm delighted to have HomePod in my room. It solves a lot of my particular issues. I want HomePod to do more in terms of Siri, a whole lot more. There's things that it seems to me that it should have been able to do out of the box, but whatever. I am frustrated with the limits of AirPlay 1, looking for AirPlay 2. And I like being able to speak to the air to get my smart fixtures to do what they're supposed to do, and have found that Siri on HomePod understands me infinitely better than Siri on all my other devices. How's that? Is that pretty complete?
I don't think it'll be complete once I get into some of these other issues, but I think it's a really good overview. Turn on Do Not Disturb so I don't get a ton of things, and it's fair enough, and it's interesting, and I appreciate that you admitting to being a Stockholm sufferer, in that you've been using shit speakers, so that definitely is going to color your impression of this. So, all right, let me get into this. This is one good thing is that I didn't do this relatively soon after I got the speaker, because I would have been more epileptic.
You were an irrational freakazoid, man. You were being crazy.
So, well, yes, but that's nothing new. That is totally nothing new. So I'm not sure why you're even bringing that issue up, as if it's adding zero to this conversation. Zero.
Yeah. All right.
So, all right. Let me start with my overall kind of valuation of this.
Okay.
This is Apple crap that some people may find useful. As of today, we'll see if it gets any better. So there's a bunch of levels that you got to evaluate this on. So first, because I, like you, am a beaten housewife by Apple, who beats us regularly. Siri actually is not as bad as everyone made it out to be. I was expecting it to be much more stupid and bad than it is. Now I'm going to credit Walt with his expectations theory, or his dentist theory in life. When you go in like dreading the dentist, and it doesn't go as badly as you feared, you leave like, that was terrific. But I mean, yeah, your gums are bloody, right?
Expectation management. It's a
right.
thing. It's a real significant thing.
So because my expectations were so low, set by the bad reports of how bad Siri was, I may be experiencing a little bit of that. It does a lot of the basic things. It doesn't do everything that the phone does, but a lot of the things that you want to do, it from kind of the speaker interaction.
You know what it can't do? It can't set an alarm on my iPhone.
Yeah, it has its own alarms, weirdly, right?
Which is fine. No, I'm fine with it having its own alarms. But if I tell HomePod to set an alarm on my iPhone, Siri understands what I'm saying, and she tells me she can't do it.
So this is I think part of the problem is that the user interface experience with this is embarrassingly bad. How is it bad? Well, so you can play from this speaker in at least 3 different ways after you do the setup. One, you could just ask it to play something, and it's going to pull from your music or pull from Apple Music the song, but it is basically driving the play. Like it's almost, I don't know if it caches a little version or streams the version, but real time, it's the player itself. When you talk to it to play something there, you could tell it to Siri is shut up, and it will stop.
Mm-hmm.
You can also play to this speaker by selecting play and selecting it AirPlay from iTunes. If you say shut up to Siri, at that point, she won't know how to shut up. You have to tell her stop or pause. So it's not an orthogonal experience. You can't just say shut up no matter what. You then all of a sudden, this is a criticism of Alexa, right? Alexa's a fucking talking parrot, or a stupid talking parrot that really doesn't understand much. You have to trigger it the right way. So all of a sudden, I now have to know the right vocabulary for when I initiate play from iTunes versus initiating play over the speaker. There's a third mode of play with this speaker. You can set the entire Mac operating system to use it as an output device, at which point you can tell it pause, stop, or whatever, and it won't know shit. It'll just keep playing no matter how much you tell it Siri to shut up. It doesn't understand at that point because Mac is pumping audio through that system wide. Even though you hit play in iTunes, it's now going through this. Also, if you set it to play from the system, but then switch to another source, it will knock the system settings off, and you have to reset the settings for it to play. And here's another interesting thing, though.
That drives me. That annoys me. I believe that's a limitation of AirPlay.
So listen to how incoherent this is. How incoherent the interaction interface is here. You can tell Siri play at 50% volume or something like that, right? If you initiated the playing through Siri, it'll do that. If you tell it to turn the volume to 50% and you initiated the play from iTunes, it's going to turn the iTunes volume knob to 50%, right? But not your Mac's system volume. Even though I can't tell, and if you initiate play from the Mac because the Mac is using this as an output source, you can't tell it to shut up even though you initiated play through iTunes, but you can still tell it set the volume to this, and get what it does. It now changes the volume of your Mac system audio volume. So it is actually controlling your Mac at that point. But it's a totally incoherent experience. And if you switch from one output source, meaning as a system playing, to iTunes, the volume are at 2 different settings, and you can have a heart attack because now it's pumping out at a high level instead of the low level. So this is such a choppy, incoherent, ill-thought-out interaction with this device that depending upon the mode of initiation of play, you have 3 different command sets of what to deal with. And if you give a command when it plays in initiated from one form, that command will be completely not interpreted by 2 other forms. So now you have to know the particular vernacular from the initiated audio on there. This is one of those things that Steve Jobs would have been like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me?
Yep.
So the UI is a shamble shit show on some levels like that. The playback of audio, if you use this as a system speaker, is terribly, poorly synced. All of a sudden, everything you watch on YouTube is now an old style 1970s kung fu movie where the lips are nowhere near in sync with the audio. It's a bad sync when you're using it as system audio output. Now,
that's fixable. I mean, right? That's a software issue that can be managed, and hopefully that will actually come in an update, and hopefully that'll be at least in AirPlay 2. But I mean, I really want to see some system level support on the Mac for this thing.
So and it may be delayed, and that sync issue is really a non-trivial issue. But the good news is, because I've discovered this device is remote controlling your Mac. At the very least, if you set it to system audio and you tell it to set the volume, tell Siri to set the volume to this, you will literally see your volume knob move on your Mac. So,
Sure.
because that communication exists, there's the possibility for better sync up. But it's a deep level thing that they got to do to make that work right. And everything's has a pause on top of the sync being shit, because it's trying its best to sync and it's still doing a shit-tastic job. So, but that is one high level point. What these idiots apparently didn't, I can allow people mistakes or entities mistakes. Everyone makes them. Everyone's human. What's pathetic is when you don't learn from your own fucking mistake. The Maps fiasco was this, and in my opinion, they're running pretty close to the Maps fiasco on this by not having labeled this beta. This is clearly beta level at fucking best software on this thing, and it's a shit experience for the early adopters that are likely getting this. And it's an incomprehensible thing. The levels of interaction I talk to, no aunt or grandma is picking up on that.
Well, hold on. I think, John, and this may be one of those incidences where you and I are going to vehemently agree with one another. But I think that Apple tried to manage these expectations by this silly focus on music quality.
That's a retard way of marketing what could have just been easily done and saying,
I agree.
This is beta. This is beta.
I agree with that. Yeah,
it's just like their fuck up with batteries. There's nothing wrong with the fuck up with the batteries. It's the bad communication that is that cost them, is going to cost them billions of dollars. And it's one of those things like, it doesn't cost you any. Again, it's a repetition of it's repeating the same fucking mistake. It would have cost them nothing to say this is 0.9 beta of this thing, and another 6 months will be released. But we want to get it in your hands early and get early feedback. You just set the expectation to that level, and everyone's cool with it. But they won't fucking learn this simple fucking marketing lesson.
Well, now I got to jump ahead too, John, because to your point, and I know that you're going to bag. Anyway, sorry, I'm jumping the gun, but this is very relevant. Tim Cook said very specifically in that FastCompany interview that they don't treat their companies like a laboratory.
Their customers, you mean?
The customers, yes. And I think that this release of HomePod is just that.
Exactly. This is not the first time Tim Cook's lied to us. It's not. Even you admitted he lied on I forget what the last topic is, and I guess we were still disagreeing about this deep pipeline. If that's not a fucking lie, I don't know what is. But
it's not a lie, man.
You were even pissy about I forget what was the last topic that he, shall we say, distorted the truth a bit. Oh yeah, his fucking bullshit press release about the batteries. Like, oh, we had this this note that talked about power management. No, it didn't. It didn't talk about anything like that. You fucking lying shitbag. And it was almost blamed the users on that thing too. So
that's kind of hyperbole, man. He's not a lying shitbag, dude.
All right, well,
that shit bothers me.
All right, well, listen.
It's just unnecessarily nasty. We were just talking in the pre-show. You and I were just talking about our inability to be civil with one another. Why do we need to call someone a lying shitbag because we disagree with them?
It's really easy. I think it's a very dishonest thing, and it's costing the company billions. It's billions. Don't exacerbate a bad situation with more bad acts.
Okay, but is a mistake or a policy disagreement, does that make him a lying shitbag?
No, I'm being hyperbolic. Come on, like, you don't fucking know me. Jesus Christ, I'm a hyperbolic guy.
I do know you, and I usually let these things go, but it actually bothers me because I don't think we should be calling people lying shitbags when they're not actually being lying shitbags.
All right.
Like, if we're going to call someone a lying shitbag, it should be when they're being lying shitbags.
I think he was pretty much lying on that. I think he was. I don't think that was in any way genuine effort to be open on that. Do you? Do you think that was a real, like, hey, we updated power management, and you're supposed to, from reading that, discern, oh, you're throttling my CPU? No, that's not a reasonable interpretation. Not by any average human being. Not even by a technical person.
Yeah, but
That's disingenuous.
I don't think they were lying.
That's right. Well, tomato, tomato. We disagree on that.
Okay, fair enough.
So where were we? So other than your panties being in a bunch, we were.
I don't like the C word either, just so you know.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of things in this life that people don't like, but Cunty McCuntface can live with it, and so can I. Whether you can or not, I understand. So you get pissy about it. Don't listen. I never told you to let me know that you're displeased. As you can see, it affects me deeply when you do. Anyway, so there's a bunch of UI issues on this that it's very beta level. But the good news is there's a lot that can be done, assuming that it doesn't become abandonware and they improve it. I don't see why they wouldn't improve it. It's still early days for them to get some of these really bad user experience things straightened out.
Yeah, to your point just now, I believe that we're going to see a lot of software improvements coming probably pretty fast. If not in fits and starts over the next 6 months, certainly by WWDC, I think we're going to see some announced features and improvements.
Okay, so it's early. Siri is more capable than some people kind of let on, but still limited capability relative to the iPhone, which is still rather limited compared to say Google Now. And the UI experience is crap. And I'm not alone with this. Several other people I know who have this. The audio will cut out randomly every 5 minutes or so. For me, it seems.
I haven't experienced that.
Sometimes people move it, big water bags moving in between your router and the speaker can do it. But there are times there's no movement and they'll just cut out. It may be, I'm in New York City, so there's a lot of Wi-Fi going around, so maybe it has to do with that. But I'm not alone. And several of my other friends who experienced it, they're in the burbs, so it may be an issue. But to your point, that's still part of the early days. It's software and robustness may come to that.
Well, and also that just validates your point about this being in beta.
Okay, so the other issues are why did I call it overall kind of Apple crap that may be useful to some people? The sound quality, the hype went the wrong way. It's all about the expectation theory. Everyone's like, this is better than audiophile grade in some ways, and you're expecting this great audio. The audio is shitty. I'll just come out and say, I'm not going to mince words. I think you're very fair to say, yeah, if you're coming from an Amazon, Alexa, this is going to be an improvement. If you're coming from the base, Google speaker, it's going to be improvement. A lot of people from the higher end Google speaker, I forget what the name of it is, but it's whatever, the Plus, the Max, they say it's kind of comparable. Maybe one's a little better than the other, but they're roughly on the same level. Where am I coming from when I say it's not great? So, yeah, it's certainly better than the built-in shitty Mac speakers. It's and better than kind of those low-end speakers. But the company is saying focus on Sonos. A lot of people say that the Sonos speakers are actually the same, if not better quality than this little speaker. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. So I have these Kheits, these 300As. And some guy supposedly did a geeky test with this. And everyone, of course, all the Mac magazines, because he said, this is great. This is an incredible speaker. It's better than the HomePod, which is, a good bit smaller too. So, but I think they're somewhat comparable in that it's $9.99 to get the Kheits. And if you get two HomePods, sorry, it's gonna for at least for me cost about $850. So they're roughly close to the same ballpark if you get two speakers. And he did this super geeky test, and the guy's name is Winter Charm. I guess he posted it on in Reddit on audiophile, and everyone picked up on this thing. Yeah, so the dude, like everyone, it's so hyper technical, but when you actually read it, he tested the Kheits at 44.1 kilohertz and 16-bit audio because it's only fair. because that's what the HomePods do. The Kheifs do, I don't know if you could read it on the bottom, but they do 24-bit 96 kilohertz. So you actually basically brain damage the Kheifs, which is, this is a circuitry processing thing.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. I get it. Who cares, man? They're $1,000 speakers.
No, these are $850 speakers.
No,
they're $850. That's what I paid for them, dude.
So how good are the Kheifs at Siri?
So the Kheifs.
How good are the Kheifs at listening to you across the room?
So dude, I'm talking about the audio quality because people praise this as an audio first experience. Kheifs can't do any of that shit. They're not only that. In theory, the Kheifs have AirPlay, and they're so shitty at AirPlay, you would never use it. This is clearly a speaker you want to use through optical or through the USB. Actually, ideally through the USB, so you get that pure 96 kilohertz, whatever. These are not even that high end. They're $999. There's much higher end than this, but it's a world of difference. The bass, not only are the HomePods too bass heavy, which is easily fixable. Even now, if you play through iTunes, you can use the equalizer, just dampen down a couple of the knobs on the low end, and it evens out and it sounds much better. But the low end is not sharp, nowhere near as sharp as the Kheifs. The mid is not only is it kind of not there, it's also not sharp, but to the point of muddiness. And the highs are just mediocre. So just
all right. So compare it, man. Okay, I hate this comparison. In that, to me, it makes no sense whatsoever.
We disagree.
I expect the Kheifs to sound better for sure, but the comparison is so apples and oranges to me.
Well, it is.
But if you're gonna compare them, wait until you can do stereo with two HomePods and then compare them. And if it still sucks, okay, all right, that's a conversation we can have.
Dude, this is what I have in front of me. This is today. This is the product today. It's not my fault that Apple didn't fucking release this. And so I think that's an important caveat that you made, that there is a chance that when these two speakers are connected, and I did play both because you can play both simultaneously out using AirPlay through iTunes. So you can play both, but it's obviously going to be a different experience when they're conjoined because they may, help each other out to sound better. I can't imagine that the two will somehow become sharper, but what the hell do I know? And you got to give, to your point, you have to give them a fair chance. So that may be addressed, but as of today, it's nowhere near comparable. Where are they better than, for example, the Kheifs? So what's impressive about the HomePods is omnidirectional. Right? The Kheifs are usually putting up near a wall, so it's reflecting. There's no ability to do omnidirectional sound. I think the HomePods, despite they're generally being muddy and weak on the mids, and almost anywhere you go around them, its omnidirectional ability to have an even experience, even when your environment is not even, is pretty awesome. That's not an insignificant technical thing to achieve, because I can't even tell you how weird and how many harsh angles. I mean, you can see there's a cylinder pole over there, and there are sharp angles, and it's tough. So the fact that you could go anywhere around this, you could put on your kitchen island, and you have an even experience almost anywhere you go, is kind of awesome. So that makes them, to your point, very different. But my point is, Apple was marketing them and pushing them heavy on sound, and they're better definitely than these other speakers that have some agent in them. But if you came with the expectation, and that's the expectation I came with, that they're going to be, this higher level, you're going to be disappointed. So set your expectations down a bit. If you come from a point where you had, kind of crappy speakers, you're going to be delighted because it's just going to be, better than some crappy speakers. But the technical analysis that guy did was bunk, and he only used one Kheif speaker too, which was designed for stereo. So anyway, it was a weird
I don't like comparing these favorably to Kheif or comparing the Kheifs favorably to them. To me, it's just a silly comparison.
Well, anyway, we can disagree on that, but the point is, the audio wasn't as great as I would have liked, and
have you compared them to? So one thing you're talking about in your comparison is that you're basically comparing desktop speakers designed to be used with a computer,
No,
possibly
they're
bookend
bookend.
computers.
They're totally bookend
Bookends.
speakers. Yeah, they're totally
And
monitors. Yeah.
and
But,
you know, Apple's positioning HomePod as, you know, the speaker you set anywhere you want, and it's going to tune itself to the room and all that stuff. Have you, which is one reason why I think that the comparison to things like, you know, any Alexa powered, including, by the way, third-party Alexa powered devices, the Google Home Max, and probably a pair of Sonos ones, and that they're the same price. I mean, like, have you compared to anything other than the cuffs?
No. And I think, and here's why I disagree with you, why this is not an interesting comparison. It's maybe blatantly obvious to you that they should not be incomparable, but I don't think to a lot of people with the expectations that were set through marketing that it's clear to people, and I think it needs to be made clear.
I think anybody who's going to spend the money on a pair of cuffs is in a separate expectation realm than anybody else.
Apparently, I'm the exception, because the marketing blather I heard that these sound like they were going to be somewhere on around this level. But to your point, the use cases are different. Like, you can't compare the Kefs, one, because they don't have an agent. You also can't compare them in that there's no omnidirectional ability. That's a real serious thing. If you've got something in a house, to your point, that's acting like an agent, but also, you know, to basically pump audio almost anywhere and music almost anywhere, that's just a very different technical solution. And in that regard, these do an incredible job. There's no monitor speakers that can match the sweet spot, the omnidirectional sweet spot that the HomePods make, because its sweet spot is staggeringly large. Yeah. Monitor speakers, you're focusing them in some place, and you've got a place where you got to be. So again, they're very different. But again, you're in your own headspace, I think, on this issue, in that you're seeing like this is obvious, and I'm telling you, for a lot of people, it's not, because the marketing hype that was surrounding the HomePods being like audiophile quality in some rags is going to lead people to the expectation I think that I had, and that needs to be cleared up.
So listen, I got to give you a little bit of credit. You were being so ridiculous, in my opinion. Obviously, you know, obviously not, probably not in your opinion. On Friday, the day that these things arrived, and you were you know, testing them out, and you were just like, oh my god, my cat. You were just, I mean, it was just, in my opinion, it was just like just listening to a deranged lunatic just going on about how, you know, the sun is purple and it's just ridiculous. What you just said, what you just laid out in front of us, is such a much more well-reasoned and more reasonable argument, and I want to give you credit for that.
Well, one, you're totally busting up my rep here, because that is the only rep that matters, is that I'm totally insane and unreasonable on this shit, which is, I have long established record, and I am annoyed at you trying to besmirch that.
I apologize, but my comment stands.
So there's one other feature that ended up being really killer on this that no one really has talked about, and it maybe make this totally worth it today for people. I have long been searching for a decent conference speaker system. They all suck.
Interesting. You've been bitching about not being able to find a good solution for years that I know of.
I've bought some high rent Polycons and shit. They're all mediocre at best. So
and you're telling me the HomePod works?
The HomePod works as now you can't make calls from it, which is deranged, but you hope that there's a software update at some point, but who gives a shit?
Yep.
You have your iPhone, it's connected to this, and you tap any phone, and then with one tap, you can send it to whatever HomePod you want, right?
Okay.
Clearly the sound quality out of this is better than any fucking Polycon you're ever gonna have.
Right.
Two, the pickup, the only thing that came close to this thing was the iPhone X, which, by the way, the iPhone 10, that's one thing no reviewer has picked up on. The iPhone 10's speakerphone is several orders of magnitude better than any iPhone beforehand.
Yep.
You know Arvin. Arvin makes Mikey from the Life commercials look like he's fucking got no discrimination whatsoever, right? For him to say something positive Arvin was like, that iPhone X is speakerphone is amazing. You can't believe it.
And by iPhone X, you mean iPhone 10, but go ahead.
No, I mean iPhone X, damn it. And the same with several other people. Several other people have also commented on it. So while the HomePod isn't a lot better than that, it is a little bit better. It's a little bit better at picking up from multiple angles simultaneously. So we did a slew of testing on this, but overall, it's superior with one little caveat. It takes about 30 seconds while you're doing the conference call thing for it to calibrate itself. So it starts off terrible on their end, and then about 30 seconds or so in, it gets really good.
Well, hopefully that will also be tweaked.
That may be a necessary thing from the conference room standpoint, because you may have 4 meat bags sitting over in this angle and 3 meat bags here, and you move this around for the conference table too, so it's got to sync regardless. So I don't really view that as a bug. It'd be great if it could do it in less than 30 seconds, but nonetheless, it's really great if you've been needing a good conference call speaker thingy. This may be a solution for you. And that feature alone, I was going to return one of these, and that feature alone made me like, fuck yeah, I'm going to keep this thing for that alone. So it's delighted me in that regard. And no one's really talking about, it's a potentially really great feature. And I could see in conference rooms too, because everyone's got an iPhone, everyone can hook up to this thing, right? When they're on the same Wi-Fi thing, and dial anyone in the room can dial someone out. And all of a sudden you have an Apple TV for presentations, right? That anyone can beam to, and you have one of these things, and it's really gutting kind of that mid-tier teleconferencing solutions for a lot of people. And Apple's not even trying on that, because as we know, Apple doesn't give a fuck about enterprise, except trying to torture anyone stupid enough to use them for enterprise. But nonetheless, it was surprisingly good even at this early beta stage.
Hold on, let me hold that ball for you. So I'm going to move us along. All right. User Ancient Alien.
Oh,
right. Who YouTube? Yes. YouTube member Ancient Alien wrote to us, and oh God, I love it. Just delights me. Anyway, he mentioned I'm a longtime subscriber to all of TMO's podcasts, noting that this is a TMO video podcast. But the one thing that was missing was a venue that truly expressed the Apple users' frustrations with Apple's lack of respect to its clients by rejecting what the users asked for by just sticking their noses in the air and saying, take it or leave it, doing whatever they wanted. But there came the day when I first heard Pop.0. Yes, he said. Finally, there was a show that let Apple have it. Now I realize that spending an hour with John may lead to a few gray hairs and a mild drinking problem. But would you? Could you? How can you not do a show on HomePod with John? Kind regards, Ancient Aliens. He's absolutely right. We just happened to have a scheduling problem for 2 weeks in a row that we couldn't do a show. It's the only reason why we're just now talking about this.
Anyway,
thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for any drinking problems that this may cause.
Fortunately, John, I don't drink and never have. So
I was talking to Ancient. Yeah, I don't care if you do.
Oh, I think he was concerned about that. Yeah, fair enough. All the way around. Wyatt, we have so many topics. Let's move on to topic 2, which is.
Oh, man, you're gonna make me look it up. I forget.
Oh, well, yeah. I've got this camera in front of me, and I can't see part of my screen.
Yeah, I know. It's
because the camera's on a thing, and the thing is in front of my screen. So please go ahead.
It's your article about the interview with Cook and FastCompany interview. I think this one will be quick.
Well, maybe.
Okay.
I respect Tim Cook. You don't.
That's not true. Don't mistake my vitriol for a lack of respect. I curse at some of my favorite people. I fucking curse at you all the fucking time, and I respect the shit out of you. You're one of my favorite people. Don't conflate the two. People that I love are not about being cursed at.
I gathered what I took what I thought were 4 interesting quotes from the interview.
I think you took the only interesting quotes from the interview.
Well, there was the thing that I know that you want to complain about is the 2020 pipeline, and I didn't mention that
because you knew it would trigger me.
No, because I thought these other things were more interesting, and also I actually believe in the pipeline, so I don't really see anything controversial. To wit, by the way, we have had AirPods, we have had HomePod, and we had iPhone 10. Those were all pipeline things. And Apple is shipping products again, man.
Dude, you are
listen. Apple is shipping products again, dude. Apple is shipping products. We had the iMac Pro is shipped, right? I mean, we've had 4 actual new products ship and iterations ship too. Like, they're doing the thing that we wanted them to do. So why won't you give them any credit for that?
So you're giving them credit for shipping a HomePod this year that was supposed to have shipped last year, and you don't see the issue with your Stockholm syndrome.
It missed a couple of months. I would rather have it be late than bad.
That I agree with, and considering their track record of being bad on software as of late, not giving a shit, that's probably a wise choice. But it still turned out bad, by the way.
But I know. Let me turn that on its head and ding me, because oh my God, could you imagine if they'd actually shipped this in December?
Holy shit.
I mean, like, I think it's very obvious, by the way, I said this elsewhere, but I think it's very obvious that the delay was not manufacturing. The delay was software.
The software is it's ill. It's just ill thought through. And like the fact that there's 3 different modes to access the same device, batshit.
Not
anyway.
very Apple-like.
Yeah.
So, all right. So anyway, he mentioned, you probably don't give a crap about this, but he said that basically the emails that he pays attention to, whether or not they're critical or complimentary or whatever, are the ones that are thoughtful. So if you want Tim to care about your email, make it thoughtful.
Oh my God, he's sharing his deepest secrets. He cares about the thoughtful.
See, you're just such a dick, man. I just thought that was interesting.
He also said that I was marketing. That's nothing marketing blather. Fuck that. Useless.
No, I disagree. I totally disagree. I think there's actually something meaningful there. But he also said that I was right about Spotify.
Dude, I have to give you credit. I thought your analysis, and by the way, we have a person in one of our tech groups that complimented you. I don't know if you understand the value of his compliment. He worked at the original Napster. And when he said that you understand a lot about the music industry that most of like the attorneys in the music industry don't understand, that's a pretty big compliment from him. I thought your analysis was super spot on.
And my point was that Spotify is screwed because music is increasingly a value add-on for platforms, and that we're going to increasingly get it. And it's like companies that like Amazon, Google, and Apple today, Microsoft, it could be Facebook, it could be, and that independent streamers they're never going to make any money. Spotify's never made any money despite being huge, and like they lose money on every customer, and they're going to make it up in volume somehow. And it's like the Spotify's only hope for eventual survival is to be bought. And I don't say that because I'm a Spotify hater, and I don't say it because I'm some sort of Apple Music lover, although I like Apple Music just fine. It's that that no one wants to bloody well pay for music. Everyone just thinks that they're entitled to shit for free.
Well, so that I think your analysis was more nuanced in the article, and it was a bit of like, it's just these other companies can run it with basically no desire to necessarily get a profit because
they don't need to make a direct profit on it.
And I there's one point that you made that and please correct me if I'm mischaracterizing it. That I take a little issue with. Not that you're wrong. I'm just more up in the air about it than you seem to be, which was kind of like, it's almost like a good thing that, Apple said that they don't have a profit motive in this. This is just about the experience, because in some sense it's bullshit, because Apple isn't paying artists. They're like, we have to feed the artists, but they're not really paying them all that much either. So that they're running it at this razor thin margin because they don't need to. I don't know if that's a good thing. And there is an argument to be made that Apple not only has deprecated software, like I've blathered on several episodes, but they've deprecated music in that it's just a thing that's so for free that people don't really appreciate it like they used to.
As a music lover and as a musician, that offends me. And not just Apple, everybody is. I mean, Apple is like the one company that actually at least gives lip service to caring about whether or not artists make any money and whether or not music has any value. They're at least playing lip service to it.
I've got to compliment you for just being really that abused. You're like, well, at least they're not saying mean things. They might be doing mean things, but at least they're not saying mean things. I'll take that. Jesus, everyone else is such shit that I'll take that as a good.
Well, I mean,
I'm not criticizing.
Here's the deal, John. Here's the deal. When Tim, when we've gotten snippets, I'm going to adjust my lighting. When we've gotten snippets coming out of Apple about streaming and about how and why they were doing things, the thing that we've gotten out of them is that, and this could have been all lies planted in the press, but I believe it. The story is that they were concerned about disrupting the music industry so profoundly that everything went to hell. And so they didn't want to just shift over to streaming. They saw the future being streaming, and they wanted to set it up in a way that was actually sustainable and made sense. And that was why Apple Music got rolled out in the way it did and the timeline that it did. And I believe that. I believe that Apple actually saw itself as a caretaker. And I think this goes back to Steve Jobs wanting to save the music industry in the first place, and the music industry hating him for it. And that Apple saw itself as a bit of a caretaker when it came to music.
Maybe I'm a bit different, I think, than you on the topic, in that to me it's I don't care what they say, what do they do? That really speaks to me on this. I don't know that I believe Jobs that he wanted to save the industry. I think he ended up doing it anyway because it happened to coincide with benefiting Apple. But that is what they did.
I think we are two sides of the exact same coin there, and you could be right, and maybe I'm right. Right. I don't know.
You're right. When we're speculating on intention, unless there's a little bit more evidence to go on, it's just kind of whatever.
Well, we heard a lot of stuff.
That guy is ugly.
We heard a lot of stuff about Steve Jobs saying that, look, people are stealing your music and they're going to steal your music. If you want people to not steal your music, this is your way forward. And all the little things that we, the little interviews, and I watch this shit obsessively, all the little interviews, the little comments, the leaks that would come out of industry talks, all those things have backed up the nominal notion that Apple did want the music industry to survive and does give a shit about artists. But the thing is, though, John, to your point, man, the labels are the only fucking companies that are making any money from streaming. The artists are getting screwed.
Yeah. And it's always easy to talk about somebody else doing something and their effort being so easy for them to do, right?
Right.
So let me just direct the minions at Apple. But it is an opportunity that they have that's unique to them. And that's why it jumps to mind that if Apple wanted to become kind of a label that is an unlabel, right? The uncola of labels. iTunes provided them that opportunity, that they could set up a structure where all these artists go direct. They get paid direct. They skip the middleman on distribution and the labels. That could have happened. Now,
the same thing that Amazon's doing with Kindle books.
So they did have that opportunity, and one wonders why don't they walk the walk on that? They hired all these music execs that have run labels and whatnot themselves. They certainly could provide that if they want to give back. Why not?
That is a good question, and I think, John, that comes down to a bit of laziness. I don't think Apple doesn't want to deal with authors, and Apple doesn't want to deal with musicians, even though they deal with developers.
Well, then there's money to be made there. There's money to be made there if you let someone like Jimmy run with it, where Jimmy has had some issues, I guess, during presentations, and I wouldn't put him up there.
You're referring to Jimmy Iovine?
Yeah, but he could run things on the back end rather well. And if you tell him this is your label, make this a great thing for all artists, and give them an incentive, give them like a little piece of that thing, good things can happen.
That's true. That is very, very true. But then would Apple run into possible antitrust issues?
Well, because right now they're nothing, right? They don't have any share, so you can't be.
Yeah, but they'd end up with all the share.
Maybe, but then if they create a structure that's changed the paradigm, and then that needs to be spun out, that's awesome. That's a win for everyone, right?
Yeah, fair enough. And the reality is that Amazon and Google would simply follow them.
Right. Anyway,
but of course now that means that artists have to deal with everything themselves too. I mean, you know, the thing about labels is evil and corrupt as labels can be, they do provide some very necessary services for a lot of musicians.
It's
the musicians.
It's management. Some of that could be offloaded to the management side. There's a promotion side, and they're huge on that too. But Apple could step into there. I mean, gosh, they got Beats One, right? I mean, there's a lot of promotion that could be done just from that. So
yeah, you know, I'm thinking about it. Having recorded an album as with an independent band in a studio. Yeah, and I got all these thoughts in my head on this, John. I don't know how much of a tangent we want to go on to, but I mean, there are certainly, you know, it's never been easier today, like this very second, as we're speaking right now, it's never been easier to record your own album and release it on the internet and on the interwebs. Never been more easy, and it can sound amazing and professional and be terrific. But there are also a lot of things that require money.
Sure.
Engineers, equipment, if you're not going to be going direct, and quite frankly, there's a lot that can be done by not going direct, with you know, great microphones and great amplifiers and you know, a thousand jillion other things that can go into recording music. And then the expertise to make it sound good. The producers and the engineers are, you know, there's so much skill, and that stuff takes money, and someone's got to be providing that money. And I can't see
I got an argument.
Apple getting in that side of business.
Let me give you a real heavy argument to show where their brain's at.
All right.
So, you know, they built their own advertising studio with their own advertising experienced people and hired that to make their own, by the way, shitty commercials. I know we disagree on that topic, but they have basically an ad studio that does all that production. So when it was for them, they found a way to do it.
Yeah, but they had a client of one, not a client of 1,000 or 10,000.
Well, the point is,
the last thing we want is Apple to be the gatekeeper for all music. Because
that I agree with. My point is, though, that they have the ability to create a structure where there are a lot of producers that could be, you know, that could partake in this. Why not change the model where the producers that help you do this? Well, I mean, I guess in essence that's a label, is what they're doing. They're doing the contract. But you know what? If you just change the contracts to not be so freaking adhesive with these artists, if you just have kind of even a standardized structure with that, where producers can get a piece of, you know, the artist because they're investing a bunch of stuff, but it's not these rape your ass for life things. Just by providing a structure like that for people to meet in a marketplace, that could be good. But again, I'm talking out my ass, one, because I should just shut up relative to you on this topic, because you know it much better than me. And two, it's always easy to talk about other people spending their money, time, and energy to do that. So.
That part is true, and that applies the same to me as it does to you. But we got 3 more topics, so let's move on to topic 2.
Well, we just finished that one. So, oh yeah, and I await that deep pipeline in late 2020. So any day. All right. Crypto.
What is that? Hold on. How many products does Apple have to release? New products, mind you. New, like, for instance, iMac Pro counts as a new product, but like an iterated iMac doesn't, for instance, just for the sake of ground rules. How many new products does Apple have to ship for you to stop bagging on the pipeline?
Apple has to update all of its products, and there's 2 major hardware ones that are missing, and they have to update their software regularly.
Mac Mini and Mac Pro.
Yes, and they have to update their software regularly, which they've basically abandoned the vast majority of. And they have to stop making shit software when they release it that has embarrassing problems.
So your issue is you don't want Apple to redefine the pipeline to be new products that you don't necessarily care about at this point.
Oh no, well, you know, you constantly say that, like, and it's not a jab. Like, look, I don't have to have a Ferrari to appreciate what a Ferrari is. I don't have to be the customer for a lot of things to appreciate what those are. So that it may not speak to my particular need is got nothing to do with it.
No, I wasn't. Yes, I have said that, and I've been a dick about it in the past. I wasn't going down that particular angle. I just mean that if Apple releases new product categories and still continues to fuck off on the Mac, which I certainly hope doesn't happen and certainly could, that to me, it seems to me that to you that is not a legitimate representation of having a deep pipeline.
Well, all products are not created equal. That you think you give a lot of credit to the earpods, and I think they're good. But to me,
AirPods,
the AirPods, it's not a major thing. And some things are weighted more heavily than others. So I don't get that vibe. I don't get that. It was that vibe in 2010 of like, I'm exhausted with just the level of production, the banging on all cylinders, on iteration, on innovation, on
man, I hear you, John. I hear you. Like,
I don't get that vibe at all. I still feel like we're in a drought.
But we're not in a drought. Things like 2017 was so much better. Second half of 2017 was so much better than the previous 18 months.
Yeah, but it sure it was. But that's like, how low is that bar? It's the expectations there. It's Walt's expectations there. Sure, when you're starving in the desert,
right, so
that
quantify it for me.
Delicious.
Quantify it for me. What does Apple have to do to get you to stop being a dick about the pipeline?
They have to. Where I will give them credit on the pipeline? Yep. The number of phones they released. The fact that they released the iPhone 8 and the iPhone X was exceeding expectations, because they just had to make the one would have been fine. That they did two is pretty impressive. So I give them credit, and logistically that's
the iPad is back to being taken care of too, unless of course one wants to legitimately complain about the lack of a mini. Which I get.
Yeah, there's that. The iPad, I don't know. We'll see if they start. And the rumor is that there's a new one coming out soon. So if we see some pattern of that, and by the way, 2 is not a pattern. You got to do at least 3 in a row. When I get the third fucking update,
okay, no, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. And I feel the same way, by the way, about we had new MacBook Pros, whether or not you liked them, and then 9 months later we had new MacBook Pros again. That's awesome, right? So if this year at WWDC probably we see what should be 12 months for another MacBook Pro iteration, then I'll start to feel a little more comfortable about Apple taking Mac development seriously.
Yeah, and I'll feel better when I see that iteration happening regularly for the Mac Pro, for the Mac Mini, for monitors,
okay, but that's years in the future, right?
So dropping stuff.
So we get screens. We get a Mac Pro.
Dude, it's a computer company that doesn't make a fucking screen. Dell makes fucking screen.
They do. They just won't sell it to us separately. That's the thing that annoys me. That just drives me nuts.
Thanks for making my point.
We don't entirely disagree on this stuff. It's just you're a dick.
Dude, first of all, it takes one to know one.
Yes.
I'm not alone in this company. So I'm not sure why you're making that point, as if there's like some substantive difference between you and me. It's just dicks at different times. And
so much of a nicer dick than you.
If you mean in personality, maybe.
So we're gonna get a Mac Pro either this year. It could actually extend to 2019. We don't know.
Dude, I don't know why you're beating this dead horse. You asked the question. I told you.
No. This is a second question. This is a second question. You're not going to trust them on the Mac Pro until essentially 2 years after the first Mac Pro, and we've gotten 2 more iterations. At least.
I mean, come on, with their track record on enterprise and professional, dropping professional products. I mean, just think about how fucking disgusting their behavior was. So many photographers go and get Aperture, and they're like, go fuck yourself. All the Pro things that they've dropped and basically abandoned. It's just a fucking embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. I don't forgive that quickly.
Let me go get that football for you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, what's the
I've got the hairdo. I
topic?
just need a curly Q.
You
All
do.
right.
Yeah, you totally do.
So the crypto tax haven in Wyoming. This is super quick. Let me see if I can put this on.
I've got it. Do you need me to send it to you again?
No, you already sent it to me. Thank you. I'm just going to put my desktop on it just so.
You want me to read it while you're doing that?
It's it's this article. Let me blow this up and make it a little bigger. Can you see it?
Do I see it? Yes, I do see it.
Wyoming bill would exempt cryptocurrency from taxes.
This is from Eth News. Is that Ethereum News? Yeah, it must be Ethereum. Yeah, it's ethereumnews.com. .com. Go ahead, ethnews.com.
So Wyoming already doesn't have an income tax, and I'm not sure if they have a property tax or not. But they're basically saying we're not going to do that. Of course, you still have to. If the federal government does tax crypto, so you still have to pay the Fed. But what's interesting about this is not necessarily the local politics of Wyoming. Is it a play for Wyoming to become kind of the Delaware of crypto, right? Like if
Wyoming. Hold on. Wyoming has one of the lowest property taxes in the states. Average effective property tax rate of 0.62%, which is the 9th lowest in the country.
So, nice. So, it could be that may be an interesting play for Wyoming, and it would be interesting to see if like cryptocurrency follows this in any way. If there's some kind of new shields and laws that come out because of their welcoming stance on this. So just a quick little news item that I thought was kind of interesting since we've talked about crypto so many times. You're a crypto maven, so I thought that
I try to be at least. And it is interesting. It's kind of, kind of interesting also from the standpoint of where is cryptocurrency. So is it on wallets that are held in Wyoming that would not be subject to this, or do you just have to, like if you're filing your taxes in Wyoming, that this wouldn't count against property taxes?
Yeah, that's really interesting how the Fed and other states would interpret it. Like, do you have to have residency or not? Interesting stuff. It's clear if you have some Wyoming held property, you could do that. And if you're, but yeah, I don't know how it plays out. But I think
Wyoming is a conservative-ish state, and this bill attracted, according to East News, support from Democrats and Republicans alike, and it was 26 ayes, 3 nays, and 1 excused exemption. So it was pretty broad-based bipartisan support.
Not terribly surprising considering the state's stance on income tax and whatnot. So the fact that it's bipartisan, I wouldn't necessarily read upon kind of the broader discussion in the country. Right?
Why do you think they would do this? Because I think they do have a property tax, and is it because they're going to actually treat income profits from cryptocurrency as income tax, but they don't have income tax either?
So I can give you 2 kind of views, one more cynical than the other. The less cynical version is, look, anytime something is young, don't try to regulate it. You don't know where it's going. It's foolish, right? Because it's such a moving target, and it may quell any enthusiasm for it. So you try to. It's very much the way the U.S. government rightly treated the internet early days. They avoided taxing in local states and whatnot. They made it not doable, just to let this thing flourish a bit before it gets saddled with regulation. So I think that's kind of the more Pollyanna view. The more cynical view is they want to become the Delaware of crypto, right? If all of a sudden this becomes a tax haven of sorts, you could see enterprises and companies forming there to help you do that. Just like Delaware has almost every company in the country is formed as a Delaware company because there's a lot of not tax advantages so much as legal protection and liability advantages for corporations for doing that. So if you do that for crypto, you bring a lot of industry into the state that way. And I would think that maybe that's another play that the legislatures are doing there. If we get in early, we might pull in some industry in that regard. So that's my more cynical view. But who knows?
It could be. And that it could be a principled stand.
That could be both.
But I doubt that. I think my gut instinct says that your second angle is probably the more accurate.
Maybe, and it could be both, right? Or some other thing we're not seeing. Anyway, just a little tidbit that there may
All
be, a U.S. tax haven-ish thing with crypto.
Topic 4.
Topic 4 is music influencers are in the ear of the beholder. So you and I were having I thought it was really cool conversation about the audio equivalent of looking up at the clouds and seeing puppies and stuff, and where influencers came in. And you've had some long thoughts on this, and I thought they were super interesting. So I was hoping to share that.
All right. So I first noticed this when really in the process of being in the Atomic Love Bombs, my old band. Before I joined the band, I got some recordings, some practice-based recordings that they sent me so I could, listen to material and learn it to go in for an audition. And boy, wow, I just loved it. This stuff is great. I heard the Love and Rockets. I heard the Church. I heard. Those are the kinds of sounds that I heard. And when I told them this, it's like, yeah, I mean, I hear this and I hear this and I hear this. They just all kind of looked at me because that wasn't what they were thinking about. And yeah, obviously they knew those bands, but that wasn't the influences they were thinking about. So I ended up joining the band and ended up playing live, and people would come up to us after we played live and say, man, boy, I love you guys, man. I just, I hear a lot of Pink Floyd. Another person, hey, yeah, man, you guys are great. I hear a lot of Led Zeppelin. I hear a lot of The Cure. I mean, like, I don't know, probably seriously 15, 20 different comparisons to bands that really had nothing to do from a stated standpoint of what we were shooting for. And what I learned from that, and also from my own comparisons, not only to the band, but then to other bands too, what I learned from that is that people compare you to what they know. And they, we sort of grab a whole, like we listen, and then we want to categorize, and then we want to, and the only thing we can categorize music to is the music that we already know. And because of that, we end up hearing those similarities and sort of putting them together, whether or not they're intentional, whether or not they're even necessarily there. And I've always found that interesting. And this came out of, I sent you a song from the Church, coincidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, hey, that sort of reminds me of the song by John Cale. And to me, that's just like, that's nutso. And that's what sparked this conversation.
Right. And what's interesting about that is, I think some of the people, the things that they said you sound like, they also were aware, probably, at least some subset of them, were aware of the bands you thought it was similar to. So it's not just only what you know. For some reason in their head, it clicks, the Kerplinko goes left versus right. And I think part of it is exactly what you said, because you can't know what you don't know, right? It is what it is. If you've never heard a band, well, you're not going to compare it to that. But I think even when people have heard things, they'll see it one way more than another, and it's kind of interesting. I have two theories on that. One theory is everyone in the industry steals from everyone else and is influenced by everyone else, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a good.
That's absolutely. That's the way art works.
So
especially music.
So you'll hear different parts, and maybe you're more familiar with one song than the other, so you attribute it a little bit more there. It's that famous song of George Harrison, "My Sweet Lord," being unconsciously influenced by, I forget, like some Motown band.
Yes, Supremes, I think.
No, it wasn't the Supremes. Four Tops or something.
No.
You can Google that in the meantime. All right. So that's one reason. There's this cross-pollination. But the second thing is, it's very a geeky computer science-y term, which is got to do with how neural networks are made, right? You get pathways that you're familiar with, and some grow stronger, some are weaker, even though you may have heard one or the other. And what happens is everything. It's that old adage, like if you're a hammer, you see every problem. I'm sorry. If you see a nail, every problem is solved by a hammer, kind of thing, right? In the familiarity with only a few things, kind of in a neural network, it's more likely that something is going to be likened to something that has a stronger neural in the neural network sense pathway, and so it could be miscategorized like that early on. It takes a lot more refinement to to get it to go the right way.
He's So Fine, which is a Ronnie Mac tune that was recorded and had a hit by the Chaffins.
I was so far
He's So
off.
Fine.
Other than it was in Motown, so I got that part right. Anyway, so I think those two things are at play. There's kind of like our own neural pathways get stronger and weaker in different areas, and so our little Plinko in our head, bobs to one way or the other. But anyway, I thought that was interesting that we acoustically do what we do with clouds. We see our own little interpretations. And usually, if you hear it a different way, if you tell me like the part that you think it sounds like, I'll be like, oh yeah, you're right. I do recognize that in the cloud now that you pointed out.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I think that art works the same way. I think that books work the same way. I think movies work the same way. I think really it's I think comedy, probably like listening to comedy, works the same way. I think that this is part of the human condition. And it really kind of speaks to the fact that music is entirely subjective. It's entirely subjective, and not only from a stylistic standpoint, but even from the way your speakers work and the way you want them to work, and which is going back to what we were talking about earlier. All of this is extraordinarily subjective. There are people who think that Beats headphones sound great. They are wrong, but they believe that they are correct.
Well, I'm going to actually go with Dave on this. And I think we're agreeing.
Dave Hamilton.
Yeah, Dave Hamilton. We're agreeing past each other. To your point, it's very subjective. Some people like the bass heavy, and between their wetware and their ears, that's the way it gives them more pleasure. So I'm not one to decry that. I think these speakers are poorly balanced. Just it misrepresents a lot of the music with how thumpy the bass is. And I do think if you train someone's ear, you can train them to understand that something's a little too sharp, something's a little too muddy, something's misbalanced from the representation from the original. Now, whether you like the original or not is a different story, right? But the question is on the fidelity side. So I'm also agreeing with you that there is a right answer to this. It's not I'm telling you don't like more bass. I'm just telling you that the current setup of this is not capable of actually reproducing with as great fidelity as another speaker.
I think for what it's worth that HomePod controls for EQ will come.
Well, I said. They exist.
That aren't dependent upon the device that you're sending music from.
Right. So and it works. I mean, I agree with you that will come because it already currently works in iTunes. So you would hope that they would get that, and you could fix that. But that does not change the nature of the bass being a bit muddy, the middle being really muddy, and the top not being it's okay. The top end is okay. Is the best I can say about it. But it's still, like I said. Anyway, I don't want to go back in there. We agree. Let's end on that positive note. And that gets us into our last topic, our new topic, which is recommending cool shit that we are into app-wise or product-wise or otherwise. And I think you had an interesting pick to start us off, and then I think I have one or two.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I can start us off. I just started messing around with ScreenFlow, and for doing some screen captures and how-to videos and stuff, and super impressed with it. It's been a bit of a wrapping my head around a new paradigm. Some things don't work quite like I expect them to, but very, very capable video editing software, and I'm super impressed with it so far.
So I'm bringing it up on screen just so people can see it. It started off as doing screen capture, meaning like literally what you would do for Control-Shift-4 and video screen capture, so you could do webinars and presentations and stuff like that. And it does that exceedingly well. But they've grown it to the point where it's my favorite video editor. So I agree with you. I find the user interface in iMovie to be so incomprehensible as to where my media is going at this point. It's so unpleasant to use that this is now my default and much more intuitive and better experience for doing quick videos. I'm sure if you do longer production and video, like movies and stuff. But for the quick cut-ups that we use for Pop.0, ScreenFlow is fantastic. It also does, like I said, your desktop capturing. So you could do like a whole movie of like a...
Which is what I'm using it for.
And you know what? One thing it does really cool, like if you ever want to do a screen capture that's tough because like your cursor disappears when you do or your cursor has to be in a certain place when you do the screen cap, if you video it, then you can take a still from any one of them from the movie it's recording. So it's useful. It's super useful in that regard.
If you aren't so interested in doing this as a live stream, I would say that we record ourselves and mix this show in that software.
Yeah, and that would be so much more work.
It's true. It is true.
All right.
As annoying as Google Hangouts is, it does do a lot of things for us.
And I like the possibility that when we get questions from Rick or anyone else live, that's kind of just fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people call us bad names, and that's also fun. All right. So I'm going to recommend something I think if your Mac doesn't have, your Mac is incomplete. Let me try. Tell me if this blows up correctly. Are you seeing a big version of this now?
I am seeing actually distorted.
Oh,
I'm seeing a bunch of garbage.
Oh, that's a shame.
But I don't know if that's. I don't know what our viewers are seeing.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it a go. But in the meantime, I'll just talk. There's a product called Menu Meters, and not Menu Meters, iStat Menu.
Oh, iStat. Oh God, I love it.
It's $5, I think, for a family pack of 5 machines.
I think it's more than that. Let me get the actual price.
And yeah, well, you look that up. But it puts these menus up here. So for instance, I'm seeing currently what my disk drive is reading and writing. Not only do I get to see that, I get to see literally what processes and programs are doing the reading and writing. The same thing with the network throughput. The same thing with how much memory I'm using, what apps are using what memory, and the processing.
Like CPU. Yeah, I use it to monitor CPU all the time. I couldn't live without the software. Single license, by the way, $6.99 to upgrade from a previous version, any previous version. $9.99 to buy it new. Well worth it. A family pack is $9.99 to upgrade, or you can buy a family pack for $14.99. And even the single license actually works on multiple devices.
And so it also lets you like customize your clock. Like here I have, it's Wednesday, February 21st. You can make it exactly like you want and see all kinds of detail. And they've added a little weather widget, which shows you the weather for your area.
Which requires a separate subscription after 6 months.
I think it still gives you the basics. It doesn't give you as detailed data, I think. That's what it is. But regardless, it's the technical components. If you're at all geeky and want to know what's going on in your system, I don't know how anyone lives without it. It's the first thing I put on every computer, even
Likewise.
so I can't give them enough praise. There's a free version, not of iStat Menu, but of something called Menu Meters. You can find it on MacUpdate.com. I think they finally updated it. It's not nearly as feature rich. Forego a latte for a day and do yourself a favor and get this. Check with your accountants first. It's a deep investment, but it's just a
worth it,
phenomenal
man.
product.
It is a great piece of software, and it has been for years. So and it only keeps getting better.
Right. And let's just leave it on that note. I have like 80 other things that are cool, but we'll go with that.
All right. Well, we actually did a reasonably good job of just taking a long time.
So what did we learn today?
Your dick.
And that your panties are still in a bunch over me being a dick.
Yes.
Well, and on that popular topic.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's what we learned today. That's everything. That's sorry to drag you through about an hour and 20 minutes to learn that.
And on that popular topic, we'll hopefully see you next week.